Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you.
You are not going to believe what happened to me yesterday. Well, we have to start? Okay.
Oh, don't you know, it's the Bill Arnold Show. It's Bill.
And a warm welcome to the Bill Arnold Show. I'm so looking forward to bringing a brand new guest to the show. Steve DeWitt's going to join me in just a minute. He is senior pastor of Bethel Church in Northwest Indiana. He's been there since the 90s. That's like 3 decades of being a pastor. And he really focuses on expository preaching. What's not to like about him?
Yeah, it's a good start for this show, Bill.
Well, for this show, it's a great start. But we're going to go a little bit beyond that. Today, talk about loneliness. He's written a brand new book called Loneliness. Don't hate it or waste it. Redeem it. And I think there's a lot of people that say, you know what? Loneliness is painful. But there is something in there that God is going to use for your good. We're going to hear all about that. Steve, welcome to the show.
Bill, it's a delight to be with you. I just was in your neck of the woods yesterday, drove back here home near Chicago, but grew up in Iowa, and Dad was a farmer engineer for John Deere, so I'm loving some Minnesota love here.
Oh, wow.
And delighted to be on the show with you today.
Yeah, were you a Des Moines boy?
I grew up in Cedar Falls.
Oh, okay.
The John Deere's Product Engineering Center is in Waterloo. And so my dad from Michigan moved there, and I grew up there. That was a long time ago now, but I still cheer for the Hawkeyes.
Did you get to climb over all those huge machines as a kid?
You know, I don't remember doing that much. If you go to the John Deere facility in the Quad Cities, you get to do that. I took my daughters there just a couple years ago. That's a fun experience. But no, they had them cloistered behind walls, and we didn't get to climb all over them too often.
Well, there'll always be a lot of the machines at the Minnesota State Fair, and you could climb all over those. So as a kid, we were just crazy climbing over those. A lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. Glad to be with you, Bill, and happy to talk about loneliness or whatever else maybe you might want to lead the conversation.
Well, I'm interested in, I think loneliness has gotten way worse since COVID, and I don't know if we've ever rebounded from that, but it really is a fascinating and sad topic because there's so many people struggling from it. So I know your central idea is not how to get rid of loneliness, but what can we learn? This could be a gift from God, this season of life.
Yes, the subtitle of the book maybe was the hint there. Don't hate it or waste it, redeem it. And my experience with loneliness, so in my own story, I've been a pastor for nearly 35 years, and I pastored as a senior pastor at my current church for 29 years, 15 of them as a single man. And so I had a lot of nights alone, a lot of life alone. I didn't get married till I was 44. And the book is not about like marriage is the answer to loneliness. In fact, I think marital loneliness could be the worst loneliness of all. But really, it comes out of my own life experience with a lot of time to think biblically and theologically about why do I feel this way? Why do I feel lonely? Where does this come from? And what can I do about it? And I learned a lot of lessons during my many years of aloneness that now I talk about loneliness and how to redeem it. So yes, the point is to realize that loneliness is indeed a gift from God. It's part of our image-bearing architecture. It's there by design. And if we can sort of invert our natural aversion to loneliness and to see it as a gift, like hunger or thirst is a gift, now we're on a path to redeeming it and for it to do its good work that God intended in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Steve, talk a little bit about the difference between aloneness and loneliness.
Well, and if you don't mind, Bill, if I could add solitude, because I think those three, it's critical to understand the difference between them. So aloneness, I would call neutral. Loneliness is bad. Solitude is good. So aloneness is just simply, being by yourself. It's not inherently bad or good. It's just a part of the human experience. Solitude is aloneness on purpose. It's aloneness with with some kind of a purpose in mind. Maybe we think of Jesus, for example, all those nights praying, even in the Garden of Gethsemane, a certain level of aloneness. And then you have loneliness, which is weaponized aloneness. It's an undesirable experience. And if we can understand that being alone doesn't necessarily mean I have to be lonely, now we're understanding, I think, God's purpose both for the individual as an image bearer of God, but also his good grace of community with other people and our longing for that. Loneliness, in some ways, it's like that blinking light on the dashboard indicating something that's supposed to be there isn't there. I mentioned my dad being an engineer. The engineers know, if there's not oil in that engine, something that's really important isn't there. And loneliness isn't the presence of something undesirable. It's the absence of something desirable, something that we're made for. And the feeling we have, I think God put there to nudge us towards relationships, both with him. There's vertical loneliness and also horizontal loneliness with other people. And in that way, it's a good and necessary thing.
Mm-hmm. I was marking up your book quite a bit, and I didn't have to go far when I started reading things like loneliness significantly diminishes us both emotionally and physically. And you talk about social isolation being associated with things as serious as premature mortality and increased risk of heart disease and stroke. And you talk about things like doom scrolling on social media. And it's just, it's not what God calls us to do.
Jesus never had a smartphone
No.
and is the greatest human being ever.
So true.
Yes, if you think about society generally, you mentioned COVID, and I would agree with you, Bill. I think whatever problems were there, COVID certainly accelerated them. And having written on the subject of loneliness, now whenever I see a headline, it pops out to me. And almost every week there is a new headline regarding the health problems associated with loneliness. I've seen it compared to, smoking packs of cigarettes every day. And it's a global reality. We're the most connected people digitally in human history and the most lonely people who have ever walked the planet. And that kind of paradox, I think, is part of the tension that our society lives with. And I believe the gospel and the church is God's solution to the problem. And in many ways, I think this could be our finest hour in terms of, Christianity, because what we are offering through the gospel is vertical restoration with the God that we're made for, and horizontal harmony and relationships, especially with other Christians, that is a foretaste of the perfection of heaven and is also what our hearts long for. So Christians that are listening on the radio, I just would urge you to realize the people around you are lonely. I was in a garage a few days ago with a group of men in a Bible study, and I made that point to them. They're talking about how to evangelize and share the gospel. In fact, I think at the Iowa State Fair, They're planning on going and sharing the gospel. And I said to them, realize everybody that you're talking to, a high percentage of them are remarkably lonely. And when we understand that other person is maybe happy as they try to portray themselves, or as fulfilled, there is certainly a longing for God made in the image of him, but there's also a longing for somebody to care for them and to love them. And this is the unique opportunity, I think, that we have in this day that we're living in.
Mm-hmm. Steve, what happens when you're in a cycle of loneliness and you don't know how to get out of it, and what you really want to have is somebody knock on your door and rescue you from your loneliness, but you're sending off some kind of vibe that is kind of pushing people away as well?
Well, this is really the crux of the issue when it comes to redeeming loneliness is most people that are lonely, maybe they sit at home and they imagine the kind of person who would love them in a way that they hope for, that they dream about, that they pray for. And so they wait, or they go to the bar hoping to meet somebody like that, or maybe they go to the church and hoping somebody will meet their needs. And if they find the right person, then they're not going to feel lonely anymore. And that kind of person never comes. And it's not really that's not how we redeem loneliness anyway. I tell the story back in my single days. The single adults listening can maybe relate to this. There's nothing more terrifying as a single adult than going to a single adult gathering where you don't know anybody. And I went to one time, and I was a little bit late. The door opened. There's 75 people all standing around, and it was like the old E.F. Hutton commercial. When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen, everyone gets quiet. The whole place stopped. They all looked at me. I could tell they were looking me up and down. And in that moment, I felt honestly, like a piece of meat. And it was obvious to me, everybody there was looking for somebody. And they wondered maybe if the new person coming through the door would be that. And based on their response, I don't think any of them thought I was that. But the point being that we're all waiting for that magic person to walk through the door, and that person never comes. And even if they did come, the more we got to know them, we'd realize that they're not the complete answer anyway. Loneliness can only be dealt with. The cycle that you brought up, Bill, can only be dealt with when we invert our way of thinking. Rather than thinking, who can meet my lonely needs? The essential key is to look to be the person who meets the other person's loneliness needs. In other words, to walk in that blessing Jesus promised, that we're more blessed to give than to receive, that if I give of myself for the relational needs and longings of somebody else or of other people, this is how then my loneliness can move from the foreground of my kind of emotional experience into the background.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the love of God through us that mitigates the loneliness in us. Or as I say in the book, you have to give your loneliness away. And too often we cling to it. We even obsess over it. But we have to open our hands and to give of ourselves. And I would encourage anybody dealing with loneliness, give it a try. Okay? Give it a try.
How do you give your loneliness away, Steve?
Well, there are needy people all around us. If we
true.
have eyes to see them.
True.
And if we just pray and maybe pick one person, that person in the neighborhood, that person in the cubicle next door, the fellow student, the person at church, and say, I'm going to take intentional steps to meet that person's needs. And that could be any number of things on a spectrum. But I can almost guarantee that on the other side of that giving of yourself, your time, your attention, being inconvenienced for somebody, it will, on the other side, you'll have a hard time finding your loneliness. because there's meaning that comes to us as we give of ourselves in ways that we never get if we look for somebody to give to us. And so we give our loneliness away by giving ourselves away in love to other people. And especially when that's done as a Christian, as an act of worship to God, now the blessing, both internal and relational, begins to flow our direction. Too many people obsess. They sit at home, they sit in the restaurant by themselves. They're just mad about how lonely they are. And the Lord needs to soften our hearts, especially towards the needs of other people. And when we do, that loneliness begins to ebb away.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back and talk a little bit about loneliness, solitude, and aloneness. I think that solitude is something that a lot of people, they need desperately, and they're not getting much of it because they're too busy fearing they're going to miss out on something.
Sure. And, here, again, I mentioned Jesus prior. I think we find in Jesus a great example of being alone on purpose. That's what solitude is.
Yes.
It's being alone for a reason, for a purpose. And, this isn't a self-indulgent kind of thing, the person who goes to the, all expense resort or something. No, this is deeper. It's more meaningful. So solitude, I would encourage to be thought of in terms of a time for careful reflection and meditation on Scripture, on my life, on those around me, and prayer. And to offer a few suggestions that have helped me in this, I find it very helpful to have a intentional place to do that. And we're all different, so pick your spot. But over the years, I've had a pool that I walk around, a playground that it's isolated and alone. My basement currently is my place of solitude. But find an intentional place that the surroundings aren't a distraction. Okay, so not too beautiful, not too, digital or whatever. Somewhere where you can really go into your thoughts and to meditate and to think. And I would encourage an intentional purpose. Okay, why am I here? And that can vary on a daily basis. Maybe it's prayer, maybe it's scripture reading, maybe it's to, consider your calendar, to pray over, your life, your loved ones, whatever. But do it on purpose. If you don't do it on purpose, it tends to not happen.
Mm-hmm.
I know of people that, and maybe Bill, you've done this, I don't know, go on retreats, like a solitude retreat to a cabin or to some place where they can, journal and think thoughts that in the distraction of normal life, they can't go there.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone's different. Find your place, find your time, find your purpose. But aloneness on purpose is a great blessing. And in the rat race of our society is often overlooked.
Mm-hmm. We're going to take a little break and be right back with Steve DeWitt, DeWitt. His book is called Loneliness. Don't hate it or waste it. Redeem it. We'll be right back. We carry each other's burdens. Please know you can bring us your prayer concerns and we will pray. Share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio team by texting or calling 877-933-2484 or share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio staff and listeners at myfaithradio.com. So glad to have Steve DeWitt on the show. He's new to this show, but he's not new to Faith Radio. You can hear him on The Journey on Sundays, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. every Sunday.
Central Time.
Central Time.
For those listening maybe outside the Central Time Zone, just to clarify.
Thank you for bringing that up, Wyatt. All right. Steve, it's your book is really... It's very, very good. I didn't read the whole thing, but I read a bunch of it, and it is it really digs deep. It's really good.
Thank you. I wrote it out of my own life experience, which those tend to be the ones that connect with other people's life's experience.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about some of the chapter insights that you have. You say that loneliness is not your enemy. It feels like it's an enemy to a lot of people.
I know, and that's part of my, I guess the headwinds that I have with this subject is, in fact, I had somebody tell me, your book is one nobody wants to see other people, other people reading it.
Right.
They hide the cover.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to know that I'm lonely or infer that, maybe this is a struggle in my life. And I think that kind of gets at there's a little bit of shame about it, like, boy, something must be wrong with me because I feel lonely. And in reality, loneliness has been a part of the human experience since Genesis 3. And I think we can all sort of take a deep breath about feeling lonely when we realize there's a reason Adam and Eve hid from God and hid from each other. And loneliness, in a way, is a kind of fig leaf hiding that we've been doing. We are afraid people will find out that we're frauds, or that maybe we don't live quite as wonderfully as our Facebook profile would suggest. And so we hide and we hope that maybe it will get better. And typically it doesn't. In fact, in the course of life, often loneliness gets worse. Some of the loneliest people are people, senior citizens who've lost loved ones and friends. And so this is not a problem that we escape. And I don't in any way suggest that loneliness is something you conquer. I think it's, as they say, it's not a problem to solve, it's a tension to manage. And I think that it can be managed into the background of our emotional experience. And when it is there, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Steve, talk about the word "if," because I think a lot of people would say, well, if my grandkids lived closer, or if people understood me better, then I think my loneliness would go away, or wouldn't be as bad.
Well, it kind of gets back to the illustration earlier of all of us hoping the right person walks through the door.
Yeah.
And maybe we think, if it was, if I had a spouse, if I had a child, if my parents were close, if my grandkids were close.
Right.
And I would say, while all those might be wonderful, and there's certainly nothing wrong with them, it's not having someone in your life that helps you overcome loneliness. That's part of my own story. I pastor for lack of a better term, I pastor a mega church, and I did for a long time as a single man. I had thousands of people, if you will, in my circle, and any number of them I could have just shown up for dinner. Sometimes I did, in fact, and they'd welcome me in. I had plenty of people. It's not having people in your life. It's not having friends, on your social media. It is sacrificing for someone in your life. That's the key. When it has to be inconvenient, it has to cost you something for it to have any impact on your loneliness. And again, in our society, we live in a low commitment. I'll get back with you if it works out. I don't want to, bind myself to your problems society. And the net result of that is that we just walk around lonely because we're receiving, we're not giving. So again, think of somebody, you want to overcome loneliness, think of somebody that to care for them would be really inconvenient for you, and then do it. And then on the other side, ask yourself, am I more lonely or less lonely on the other side of this? And try it not to be a one-off, sort of parachute kindness, but an ongoing kind of serving other people, and not generally, but a person or two. And this is what life's about. This is how God made us. This is how Jesus lived. The ultimate example, of course, is the Lord Jesus Christ, who His life and ministry was utterly self-giving, and the cross is the greatest example of love. And really, that's kind of what we're talking about. It's love, agape, self-giving, over myself for the good of other people, that will minimize the sting of loneliness.
When I think of the way we walk around nowadays, looking down at our phones and earbuds in, and I mean, I remember when I first started going to gyms a long time ago, that was the quickest way to develop camaraderie with other guys that were working out, and you would encourage and spot one another and share information that you had. And nowadays, even if you have 5 minutes in a line at a grocery store, the person behind you is probably looking at their phone and most likely not open to any kind of small talk or conversation. It's really easy to be lonely in public.
You have your finger on one of the big problems, Bill, is, the kind of head down lifestyle that we have. I've got a teenage daughter, and we're in the, like, do you get a smartphone? Do you not? And so far we have not, in part because the studies all show that, the presence of a smartphone is actually counterproductive to the kind of communication that young people need to develop and mature in their adolescence. And yet it feels like they're connected, but they're not really connected, not in the lemonade on the front porch talking kind of way.
Right.
And our society misses that. There's a great story told about a tribe in Africa. It's a true story, where for like centuries, the women would go to the riverside and they would wash their clothes in the river. Well, then technology came. All these women got, washers and dryers in their house, and loneliness invaded the tribe. Why? Because those times at the riverside, as they were washing their clothes and talking and laughing and experiencing community, were so incredibly life-giving to them that they missed it terribly. So technology is a blessing, but it also it typically feeds into the individualism, this kind of radical selfism of our culture. And is it no wonder that we all are feeling more lonely than our forefathers did? I think it's certainly part of the problem. So perhaps that'd be a good step, everybody. Let's just all, put the phone aside and actually engage with people in our life. That'd be a huge help.
Well, even if you just say to yourself, I want to be more aware and more present, even when I'm going about my daily errands and routines, and look for someone that I might have a conversation with or eye contact with. People respond really favorably to a smile or some eye contact. And even something like that can help alleviate a lonely person's pain that day.
Yeah. No, I think a little bit goes a long way, especially now. I mean, you don't even have to be that good at it today for people.
Right.
They're like, wow, you're so kind and all of that. Where, 100 years ago, it was normal. Now people they assume that you're looking out for yourself. They assume that you're just into your phone, into your life, and you don't care about them. Even a little banter, a little, noticing of their cute child or whatever is sort of countercultural. And I think is more of a blessing. It's a blessing that punches above its weight, if you will, that in ways that I think prior generations, it was more normalized. So, yeah, I don't think you have to be a great, extroverted person for people to find you friendly and interesting, just by noticing them, see them, see the people around you. I think that's a great point.
Steve, I've told this story before, but my mother passed away 9 years ago, and I was missing her one day kind of more than usual. And I was in the grocery store where I used to go buy her groceries, and there was this elderly woman with a walker in the aisle, and I just felt like I wanted to have conversation with her. So I said, well, what kind of salad dressing do you recommend? Because we were in the salad dressing aisle. And she said, well, I don't cook much anymore, but when I did cook, my kids liked this. And she pointed to a big bottle of ranch dressing. And we traded a few other little moments. And then she said, thank you for talking to me. I said, oh, it's been a delight talking to you. She said, no one talks to me anymore. And she said, next month I turn 103.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, you never know who you might meet.
Yeah, you just don't know who and how isolated people might be and how lonely they might be. And who would talk to a person in the grocery store? Well, pay attention. You might find someone that's going to be an excellent opportunity to brighten someone's day or even encourage them in ways that you can't even imagine. Yeah.
You know, Warren Wiersbe said that if you treat 100% of the people you meet as if they're going through a major crisis in their life, you'll be right 80% of the time.
Oh, that is so good. That is so good. Yeah. We'll take a little break. Steve DeWitt is my guest. His book is called Loneliness. Don't Hate It or Waste It, Redeem It. He spells his last name D-E-W-I-T-T. We'll be right back.
Bill needs a minute. He needs a minute. Bill needs a minute. He'll be right back. Bill needs a minute. He just needs a minute. Bill needs a minute. He'll be right back. Bill took a minute, and now he's back.
I'm back with Steve DeWitt. His book is Loneliness. Don't Hate It or Waste It. Redeem It. Another sister on the text line said maybe Steve knows the UK has appointed a minister of loneliness. That is a government position.
Yes, that is true. And most sociologists are calling it an epidemic in our society. So the U.S., I don't think, has quite taken that step yet, but maybe it will.
Mm-hmm. And another sister said, Steve is excellent, excellent, excellent. 3 in a row. That's pretty impressive.
Apparently my mom is listening.
Yeah, of course she is. But that's she chimed in, so it's good she's listening.
Yes, she did.
Yeah. So does loneliness drive us to God?
Well, again, I think we have to categorize this and recognize that there are different kinds of loneliness. There is social loneliness, which is the desire for human relationships. But at the core of our loneliness is a loneliness for God. You know, as Augustine said, our hearts are restless until they find their rest in Thee. We are made for God. And when Adam and Eve hid in the garden, and when they felt naked, that nakedness was not the lack of clothing, it was the lack of righteousness, and they hid themselves. And I would maintain that it's great to mitigate horizontal loneliness, but in the end, the most important loneliness to mitigate is the one that the loneliness that we have for God. And of course, this is why Jesus came, to reconcile us to our Creator, and his death on the cross providing a way for lonely human beings to be restored to the one most important person that our hearts long for. And so I think loneliness can be a means by which we find our way to God. And, you know, that ache in our hearts for transcendence, that sense that something is missing, all of that, I think, properly understood, can be described as a theological loneliness. It's a desire to be restored to God and to find ultimate meaning in the one that we were made for. And I would encourage anyone listening, if you might think your loneliness, if only I had a girlfriend, if only I had a spouse, if only I had a friend group or whatever, um, might it be that hiding behind those surface lonelinesses is a core loneliness and a longing for someone higher, someone deeper? And the Bible tells us that we are made for God. And I would encourage you to consider Jesus as the means and also the goal of the deepest loneliness in your heart. And it would be great if your loneliness led you to faith in the Lord Jesus Christ.
With Satan being the counterfeiter and the liar, God says, I'll never leave you or forsake you. So the only thing Satan would say is, no one's going to ever want you. You're going to be alone.
Well, yes, I think, if you think in terms of counterfeit intimacies, Satan certainly places lots of those in front of us. I think about pornography as a prevailing faux intimacy. I'm lonely. I long for that kind of naked experience of humanity. And, so many millions and millions addicted to a counterfeit intimacy that in the end does not satisfy. And so I think Satan, he's the wizard who is beguiling our society with lots of options that seem to fit the need, but in the end do not, and certainly don't answer the eternal question.
Mm-hmm. Steve, do you think that you can cut your loneliness, not in half, but cut it down by not talking about your loneliness? How do we deal with that?
That's an interesting question, Bill. I've never been asked that. I would say it depends. It depends on the motive. If I'm not going to talk about my loneliness as a death to self and a step towards talking with other people about their needs, I think the answer would be yes. But too often, I think people allow the loneliness to weaponize in them, and it drives them away from people. So, I think about the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, maybe Upper Minnesota as well. Similar. I've been up there fishing many years, and you see these cabins out in the middle of nowhere, and beware of dog, no trespassing,
right?
Fences everywhere, and you see this trailer up and through the trees, and you wonder, what's that guy's story?
Right.
Why is he so far away, and why is he obviously doing everything he can to keep people away? And I think often what has happened is a deep hurt, a deep disappointment, an unmet expectation has driven people further into the woods. And so I think if the not talking about my loneliness is weaponizing and pushing me further into the woods relationally, that would not be healthy. So again, I think if it is a healthy, like, what, I don't need to just, when people get around me, they just hear how terrible my life is and how lonely I am. I got to get over myself. And I'm going to do it by not talking about that. I think that would be a good thing as a part of a step towards selflessness.
Steve, what is sticky love that you talk about in the book?
Sticky love. Well, it's a function of agape. Agape love, I define as self-giving for the good and joy of another. And when our love is sticky, it's quick to forgive, it's committed, it overlooks the little offenses, it doesn't hold grudges. You think of that 1 Corinthians 13 description, keep no record of wrongs. All of that it's a very sticky kind of love. And praise God, God's love for us is like, duct tape on steroids. It's the stickiest love of all. What can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus? Nothing. And human love, when it's at its best, and I wish my love was always this way, but when it is this way, when it's at its best, it resembles that that kind of enduring love that God has for us. Love endures all things. And it seems to me in our society, there's so much like throwaway relationships. Everything's disposable. I'm done with you. I'm on to somebody else. And it just creates a kind of serial, superficial life experience that is very different from the kind of deep community that certainly in the local church we're called to with one another. By this will all men know that you're my disciples, your love one for another. That's the kind of love that we're longing for. And Bill, here's a key point, if I could emphasize this. It is critical that we give to others the kind of love that we long for, okay? Which is the golden rule: give to others as you'd have them, or do to others as you'd have them do unto you. But in this category, how would you want to be treated? Let's say that, you did something dumb, or, you forgot something you should have remembered, or you were the one who was the offending party. How would you hope other people would treat you? Graciously, kindly,
Yes.
lovingly? For sure. So how about treating other people in their mistakes and in their oversights and, whatever sin even, to be gracious towards them? I think a big dose of that in evangelical churches would go a long ways towards churches looking like God intended them to be. Too often they're divisive and short-tempered and, just people that don't resemble Christ. And so, yes, that's a kind of an ancillary point to loneliness, but I think it helps us when we are treating others in the way that we would want them to treat us and in the way that God has treated us. Romans 15, welcome others as Christ has welcomed you. And that was not performance-based. It was not earned. It was graciously given. And that kind of hospitality of the heart, where my heart is open to people and new friendships and relationships and needs, is, I think, the essence of Christian hospitality, and goes a long way for us to get over ourselves and all of our loneliness.
So good. Steve DeWitt is my guest. His book is called Loneliness, Don't Hate It or Waste It, Redeem It. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with Steve in just a minute. It is my deepest desire that you take the very first step of faith by placing your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. If you've got questions about what it means to begin a relationship with Jesus, text the word faith to 41224. My guest is Steve DeWitt. His book is called Loneliness, Don't Hate It or Waste It, Redeem It. And you say in your book, Steve, that Jesus' heart was and is hospitable to seriously flawed people like you and me. I just love that idea of Jesus being hospitable.
Aren't we glad?
Ever.
If we had to gussy ourselves up in order for him to accept us, none of us could. So, and I think that's, one of the challenges I think we have is that, we tend to be transactional in even who we consider for a future relationship. What is this person? Are they like me? Do they like what I like? Do they offer me something? And Christ was just completely the opposite of that. We have nothing to offer him, and we can't impress him. And yet he knows the worst of us, truly, and yet he loves us. And what a great model to follow.
Yeah, so good. So many people want contentment in their life, and when they find themselves suffering with loneliness from time to time, they look at contentment and they go, that's out of reach.
Are you asking what to do about that, or
Well, yeah,
is
I'm just suggesting that it's probably an ongoing thing for so many people because we have these seasons of discontentment and loneliness. It can be it can be in a relationship. It can be in a job where you feel like you're the Lone Ranger at work and nobody listens to your ideas, and you can deal with a lot of different kinds of loneliness. And then at the end of the day, it just kind of chews into your contentment.
Well, spend time in the book of Philippians, where Paul so wisely addresses that issue, and Philippians 4:13 quoted out of context so horribly. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, but in context, it's on the subject of contentment, and the point Paul makes there is that he's learned to be content in whatever circumstance. And, Jeremiah Burroughs, the old Puritan, such a brilliant book on contentment, The Rare Jewel of Contentment, makes the point that by God's grace, contentment is not changing my circumstances to meet my desires. It is changing my desires to meet circumstances that I believe God is sovereign over. So you might wish that you could be friends with Michael Jordan or, some famous actor or whatever. Maybe Michael Jordan's my choice. But it's never going to happen, But you've got that guy next door, and there's that fellow that likes to talk at the lunchroom. And, these are the people that God has sovereignly placed in our life. And when you look at who Jesus surrounded himself with, the disciples, not likely candidates for friends of the Son of God. And yet Jesus wasn't too superior to be friends with a fisherman and a tax collector. And if we humble ourselves and open our hearts to the people that God has providentially placed around us, now we're in a position to meet their needs and to lose our loneliness.
Mm-hmm. We just have a couple of minutes left, Steve, and I've loved having you on. Is there a tip or two we can leave our listeners with tonight on redeeming loneliness?
Sure. First of all, recognize pride is your enemy. Pride is the fountain of loneliness. And I would do everything you can to fight against that. Pray about it, confess it to the Lord. I'd also be wary of your social media. I think it's very complicating internally and emotionally regarding your relationships and your status and comparison to other people. And thirdly, I would say allow the loneliness pain to motivate you. I think of all my years of aloneness as a single person, and I often, when I just was really upset about it, I would head out the door and I would leverage it and take that energy and point it in directions towards other people. I think that's one helpful thing to do. And then finally, I just as an encouragement, locate that loneliness in the great redemptive story. I'm so glad to say that for the Christian, loneliness is a very temporary and fleeting experience. Someday, we will never be lonely again.
Amen.
We will be with God. We will be with Jesus, who will wipe every tear from our eyes. And we will be with other redeemed people who are 100% committed to our joy. And that will be our eternal experience. It's a part of the broken world. It's a result of sin. It is not itself sin. Don't feel guilty about being lonely. But you can do something about it. So don't hate it. Don't waste it. Redeem it.
Beautiful. Steve, thank you so much for doing the show. It's been an absolute delight meeting you.
It's a joy to be with you, Bill.
Thanks
you
so much. Steve DeWitt has been my guest. And again, his book is Loneliness. Don't hate it or waste it. Redeem it. That wraps up our show for the day and for the week. Thank you for supporting Faith Radio. See you next week. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.